Imagine needing a service dog to help you get through daily life, only to have someone in power tell you that your dog isn't allowed. That's exactly what happened to me when Karen, our HOA president, decided my service dog violated community rules. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. After all, federal law protects service animals, right? But then Karen doubled down. She issued fines, threats, and even sent letters demanding I remove the dog or move. Big mistake. Because if Karen wanted to play dirty, I was more than ready to fight back and use the law against her. And by the time I was done, Karen wasn't just embarrassed, she was in serious legal trouble. Before we dive into this insane story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Tailflow, and drop a comment if you've ever had to fight back against an unfair HOA. I had lived in my neighborhood for 2 years with zero issues. My service dog, Max, was well-trained, quiet, and never caused problems. Then Karen became HOA president. Karen had always been nosy, but once she got on the board, she turned into a full-blown dictator. She made up new rules, issued ridiculous fines, and acted like she owned the whole neighborhood. But I never expected her to come after my dog. One afternoon, I found a letter taped to my door. Notice of violation. Service animals are not permitted in HOA properties. Please remove your dog within 14 days to avoid fines. Fine $200 per day of noncompliance. I stared at it, completely confused. Not permitted. That's not how service animals work. I immediately grabbed my phone and pulled up the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. And guess what? Service dogs are federally protected. This wasn't just wrong. It was illegal. I wasn't about to let Karen get away with this. So the next day, I marched down to the HOA office, letter in hand. Karen was sitting at her desk, smirking like she was waiting for me. She said, "I assume you got the notice." I held it up. "Yeah, and it's completely illegal." Karen didn't even blink. The HOA has strict pet policies. No dogs over 25 pounds. It's in the rules. I shook my head. Service animals are not pets. They're protected under federal law. Karen rolled her eyes. "Well, this is private property. We can enforce our own regulations." That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. Karen knew she was wrong. She just didn't care. So I decided to fight back. And trust me, Karen was about to regret ever messing with Max. Karen thought she could bully me into giving up my service dog with her fake HOA rules. But what she didn't realize, she had just picked a fight with federal law. The moment I got home, I called a disability rights attorney. I explained everything, how Karen had sent me an official violation notice, threatened daily fines, and flat out refused to acknowledge federal law. The lawyer didn't hesitate. "This is an ADA violation and could put the entire HOA in serious legal trouble." She instructed me to document everything, letters, emails, and any HOA policies about pets. File an official complaint with the Department of Justice, DOJ. Warn the HOA that they were breaking federal law, giving them one last chance to back down. That same week, I attended the next HOA meeting with my lawyer's official legal notice in hand. Karen was there, acting smug as ever. Before the meeting even started, I stood up. "I have something to address." Karen sighed loudly. "This isn't the time." "It is," I interrupted. I held up the legal letter. "Because the HOA is currently in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act." The room went silent. I continued. "I've spoken with an attorney, and if this isn't corrected immediately, the HOA will be facing a formal federal complaint." Karen's smirk disappeared. "That's ridiculous." "It's not," I cut her off. "Your rule about banning service dogs is illegal, and I have every right to take this to the DOJ. If you don't retract the violation notice immediately, I'll be filing an official lawsuit." At this point, the other HOA board members started whispering nervously. One of them, Mrs. Thompson, finally spoke up. She was an older woman, known for being strict but fair. She adjusted her reading glasses and glared at Karen. "Karen, is this true?" she asked. "Did you issue a violation for a service dog?" Karen's face turned red. "We have the right to enforce our pet rules." "That's not what I asked," Mrs. Thompson interrupted, her voice sharp. "Did you find someone for a federally protected service animal?" Karen fumbled for words. I was just trying to keep the community in order. Mrs. Thompson let out a deep sigh. Karen, this is not up for debate. The HOA is not above federal law. If we don't fix this, we could be looking at major legal trouble. Karen looked like she wanted to explode. But she wasn't off the hook yet, because I wasn't just fighting for my rights. I was about to make sure Karen paid for what she did. Karen was cornered. The HOA board was realizing just how deep she had dug herself into a legal hole, and Mrs. Thompson's warning about major legal trouble was just the beginning. But Karen, she still thought she could bully her way out of this. So I did what I had promised. I filed the official complaint. That night, I submitted a formal complaint to the Department of Justice's DOJ Civil Rights Division. My lawyer helped me draft it, and it included the violation notice Karen had issued, screenshots of emails proving she ignored federal law, a copy of the HOA's pet policy, and the illegal no service animals rule, a list of witnesses, neighbors who saw her enforcing the ban. Within a week, I received confirmation from the DOJ. My case was being investigated, and if the HOA was found guilty, they could face massive fines or even be forced into federal compliance training. Karen had no idea what was coming. A few days later, I got an unexpected knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was, Karen. She wasn't smiling this time. No smug look, no fake politeness. Just pure panic. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. I leaned against the doorframe. "I don't think we do." She let out a sharp breath. "Listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was only trying to enforce community standards." I folded my arms. "A misunderstanding? You sent me a fine and tried to kick my service dog out of my home. That's not a misunderstanding. That's discrimination." Karen visibly flinched at the word. "Look, I spoke to the board, and we're willing to drop the violation. No fine, no trouble. Just let it go." I smirked. "Too late," I said. "The DOJ is already looking into it." Her face drained of color. "You what?" I nodded. "I filed a federal complaint." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You didn't have to do that." "Well, I was going to fix it." I shrugged. "Then maybe you shouldn't have broken the law in the first place." She stared at me, her hand shaking slightly. For the first time ever, Karen looked genuinely scared. And that was just the beginning of her downfall. Within 2 weeks, the HOA received an official letter from the DOJ. It basically said, "Your HOA is under investigation for violating the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. If found guilty, you may face federal fines and mandatory compliance training." The next HOA meeting, Karen sat stiffly in her chair, eyes darting around nervously. The other board members? They were furious. Mrs. Thompson stood up, holding the letter. "Karen, do you have any idea what you've done?" Karen stammered. I was just following the rules." Mrs. Thompson slammed the letter onto the table. "You mean the rule you made up? The one that is illegal under federal law?" The room murmured. Karen swallowed hard. I didn't think it would go this far." "Well, it did," Mrs. Thompson snapped. "And now the HOA is paying the price." Another board member chimed in. "We're not getting fined because of her." I moved to remove Karen from the HOA board immediately. The vote was unanimous. Karen, kicked out on the spot. Her final act of power-hungry entitlement had cost her everything. But her humiliation wasn't over yet. Karen was officially removed from the HOA board, but that didn't mean she was off the hook. Because remember that DOJ investigation? Yeah, that was about to hit her hard. A month after I filed the formal complaint, the Department of Justice completed their investigation. And the results? Brutal. Official DOJ ruling. The HOA had violated federal law by attempting to ban a legally protected service dog. The HOA was ordered to rewrite their pet policies to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. The HOA board had to attend mandatory training on federal housing laws. And the best part? Karen was personally fined $5,000 for her role in the discrimination. When the HOA announced the ruling, the neighborhood erupted in gossip. "Did you hear? Karen got fined. She actually thought she could fight federal law and win. I bet she's losing her mind over this. And losing her mind? She was. A few days later, I was walking Max down the street when I saw Karen arguing with another homeowner near the HOA office. She was waving a letter in the air, practically screaming, "You can't just fine me for this." I was trying to uphold the community's standards. The other homeowner, Mr. Delgado, just shook his head. "Karen, you're the one who got us into this mess. If you had just followed the law, we wouldn't be dealing with this." Karen turned bright red. "This is unfair. I was just doing what's best for the neighborhood." I couldn't help myself. I walked by, smirking. "How's that no service dogs policy working out for you, Karen?" Her head snapped toward me. "This is your fault," she shrieked. "You had to make this a big deal." I shrugged. "Yeah, because it was a big deal." She let out a furious noise, crumpled the letter in her hand, and stormed off. And just when I thought this story couldn't get any better. Within a month, a for sale sign went up in Karen's yard. Rumors spread that she couldn't afford the legal fees and fines, and instead of sticking around to face the consequences, she decided to cut her losses and run. By the time her house finally sold, she was gone. No big farewell. No last-minute attempts to regain power. Just gone. After she left, the neighborhood felt completely different. The HOA stopped handing out ridiculous fines. The new board actually worked with homeowners instead of against them. And best of all, Max said I never had another issue again. Karen thought she could control everything. She thought she could bend the law to her will. But in the end, she lost everything. And the neighborhood thrived without her. With Karen finally gone, the neighborhood felt like a completely different place. No more nonsense fights. No more power-hungry HOA drama. No more battles over things that were never problems in the first place. For the first time in years, the HOA was actually doing its job properly. And trust me, everyone noticed. Once Karen was gone, the new HOA board made some big changes. The illegal pet policy? Deleted. The ridiculous fines Karen handed out? Canceled. The new rule? No board member could enforce personal rules that violated federal law. Mrs. Thompson, the new HOA president, even made an official announcement at the next meeting. "We're here to support this community, not control it." That was the first time in years an HOA meeting ended in applause. Even though Karen was gone, her infamous legacy lived on. So, when's the No Fun Allowed memorial being built in her honor? I slept with my windows open last night. No HOA letter in my mailbox. It felt illegal. I was going to train my dog to bark Karen every time someone walks by, but I think Max has it covered. People even started jokingly renaming the old HOA office the Karen Memorial Dictatorship Center, the House of Unnecessary Fine, and my personal favorite, Karen's Court, where the rules are made up and the laws don't matter. Karen thought she was the heart of the community. But the truth? She was the problem all along. Looking back, this entire insane situation taught me a few things. Some people love power more than they love doing the right thing. Karen didn't care about rules, she cared about control. Always know your rights, because some people will try to take them away. If I hadn't known federal law, Karen would have gotten away with it. The best revenge is holding people accountable. Karen didn't think I would fight back. She was very, very wrong. When a Karen moves out, peace moves in. The neighborhood became a million times better without her. Karen thought she was above the law. She thought she could bully people into submission. She thought she could bend the rules to her will. But in the end, she lost her power, her position, and even her home. And me? I gotta keep my service dog. And let me tell you, Max has never looked prouder. And that, my friends, is how Karen's obsession with power completely backfired. What do you think? Have you ever dealt with an HOA Karen who tried to enforce rules that weren't even real? Or have you ever had to fight back for your rights against a power-hungry neighbor? Share your wildest HOA or legal revenge stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video to keep HOA Karens in check. Subscribe to Tailflow for more insane HOA and revenge stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss another Karen takedown. Thanks for watching, and remember, if an HOA Karen ever tries to break the law, Just remind them that federal law exists. See you in the next one.